Hello, Gareth here. In this video on basic drawing for watercolor landscape painters, I'm glad I remembered that, there are 3 points. The first point is decide, before everything else, decide where your horizon line is. The second thing is decide where your vanishing point is along the horizon line. And thirdly, if you're going to draw a big object that may be your focal point, I would recommend that you don't draw it head on or sideways, but at an angle. So now let's see what I'm talking about on paper. Here we go. So when you go to create your painting, the first thing you want to think about is the sky and the ground, and which area is going to be the most important. So really you're thinking about where to put the horizon line. So for example, if you have a low horizon line, then that means the sky is the most important thing in your painting. So you're going to need an interesting sky, like a sunrise or sunset, and you might even have some mountains. So we can see the focus is on the sky and not on the ground. So this is low horizon. Or we can have high horizon. Yes, H, a high horizon. So here the sky is less important, and we can have quite an ordinary sky, just a blue sky, but the ground is very important. And so this could be, for example, a path with some figures walking along the path. So we are focusing now on this ground area here. It could even be like cars or buildings, but the ground area is the dominant space. So that will be with a high horizon. And finally, you can have, but I don't recommend, your horizon bang in the middle. So the reason I don't recommend this is because the sky and the ground are competing against one another. So the eye is not sure which is the main focus area. Are we looking mainly in the sky, or are we looking mainly at the ground? Of course, if you put something like a house here, then that does create a focal point right in the middle of the painting. And so I have seen that in a painting, and it did look good, but that is unusual and difficult. And I think these ones which are asymmetrical, in which either the sky or the ground is more dominant, is normally an easier composition and a better one normally. But sometimes this can work, but I don't recommend it. Okay, so the next thing is you've decided on your horizon line. So let's do, for example, a high horizon. Then the very next thing you need to decide upon is your vanishing point, your VP, vanishing point. So for example, we could have a vanishing point in the middle. So it's going to be along your horizon. And if we have it in the middle, let's pretend this is a field with furrows. That means we're going to have lines like this. If this is a field with furrows. And I haven't drawn this very well, but basically the distance between the lines is widest here, and then it becomes more and more narrow. So that's not very well done, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. So these will get closer together, and that gives us a sense of perspective. That's if your vanishing point is in the middle. Then we can have a vanishing point, so a horizon line. We can have a vanishing point here, and then in that case, let's just get these right, and then this time be a bit more careful. So these lines become more and more narrow. Actually, they'll probably still be quite wide there, but as they go up like this, they become more and more narrow. And yeah, this one's easier to understand. More and more narrow, like that. So these would still be quite wide here, but here and here becoming rapidly more and more narrow. So that's a nice perspective there, and we would probably have our focal point here, and maybe there could be mountains here, farmhouse here, something like that. And also you can have your horizon line here and your focal point outside the painting, so you won't get these kind of lines. Instead you'll get something a bit like this, like that. And then if you're going to draw a figure, decide how high your figure will be. So here's our figure, Stickman. And then what you can do is just connect him to that horizon line and that focal point, and then you've got a good idea how big your figures will be. Whoops. So that gives you a good idea how big to draw your figures. So one final point that is important in drawing is if we have a house, say this is the front of the house, the front, and this is the side of the house. So this is when you're drawing objects like your farmhouse. It's always best, if you can, to draw not the front, not the side, but to draw the house at an angle. It might be a little bit more difficult, but you should always try and draw all things, all big main objects in your painting at an angle, because as you can see, that's very boring. It's like a wall, it just stops you going into the picture, and this too, the side, it's just like a wall, it just stops you, whereas this can lead you into the painting, and it's just more interesting. And the more perspective you add to this object, you don't have to do too much, but it creates that illusion of depth which will draw the eye into the painting, and for paintings that are slightly realistic, it's really good to have that. So this is a really basic drawing lesson for landscape painters. I hope it's helpful.